Hey guys, how's it hanging, everybody? This is Storm Pow, and today we are going to be answering the simple question of, is Dragon Ball Legends pay to win? And I've been wanting to make a video on this for a little while, but what really cemented the idea was that we talked about it on the Nimbus Cast podcast recently with Lethal. And by the way, if you guys don't already know about that, go check that out and subscribe, because we do that live here on this YouTube channel, but there's also audio only versions as well if you want to listen to it on Spotify and whatever. Links in the description for that. But anyway, other than that podcast, I had some other thoughts that had been brewing in my mind about it that I wanted to share after the fact. And for those of you who don't know, the term pay to win basically is tied to certain free-to-play games such as Dragon Ball Legends, and it's obviously a negative connotation and a negative label to be put on a game. And what it implies is that even though the game is free to play, anybody can download it for free and play it for free, that it is pay to win. And rather, like, to actually succeed in the game and to do well, you have to pay. You have to pay money to, purchase in-game currency or things of that nature. So that way you actually have a standing fighting chance against other players. With Dragon Ball Legends right now, the 1,000-day celebration's going on, the 3rd anniversary. Lots of really cool hype things. There are a lot of new players coming to the game. I've got some other videos on new player guides, and I've got a lot of people asking me, and debating whether or not it's free to play. So of course, I also want to keep this conversation going in the comments. Be sure to leave a comment letting me know what your personal opinion on it is. But I'm going to break it down into a lot of different categories here, and make sure that you do watch the whole video to get the full answer, because there's many layers and aspects to this, but I'll try to be as brief as possible. So the main thing is obviously that the way Dragon Ball Legends functions is you have Chrono crystals. That's the in-game currency, and you primarily use those for summoning. You can use them as well to purchase like additional energy or to soul boost characters, and make them a little bit stronger. But the primary use of the Chrono crystals is to do summons. And if you're not familiar with gacha games of this kind of variety, there's always some sort of in-game currency. In Dragon Ball Dokkan Battle, it's the stones. They all have something unique, and you use that to kind of gamble and get a chance of pulling a new character. These characters drop on new banners, and you have like usually a time-sensitive limited release of this new character. And a lot of times, at least in Dragon Ball Legends, they put pretty good effort into making sure that that new character is awesome and a viable option in the meta, which is of course just kind of making sure that it is going to be a good unit, and it's gonna, as soon as it enters the battlefield, it's going to be a good viable thing to use, and people are going to want to use it so that way they win. Now, you don't have to use real life money on Chrono crystals. The game has a lot of different ways to earn it, the main being the story mode. So when you're new, you probably won't have any reason to buy Chrono crystals, because you'll have so many story mode missions, and they each give you 20 plus crystals a pop. So I mean, it adds up very quickly. You can do a multi, which is a consecutive summon is what the game calls it, and that's where you'll pull 10 different units, and that usually goes for 1,000 Chrono crystals in most of the game's typical banners. They also have daily discounts. Again, if you've played other gacha games, none of this is exactly new or unique. And so even though you can get Chrono crystals by being free to play and not actually spending any real money on it, the chances are obviously a lot higher of pulling those characters if you're spending money. I mean, you're able to get more Chrono crystals faster, therefore you're able to summon more often, and therefore your odds of getting that good character are a lot higher. And not only that, but you have a much higher chance of pulling duplicates of that unit, which therefore make that unit even stronger. So for example, if I've got the same unit, and I just now pulled him, and I only pulled him once, and he is at 2 stars, and somebody else has pulled him a lot of different times, they've got him at 7 stars. That 7-star unit is going to be way more stronger, and he's also going to buff the other team members a lot better than mine that is only at 2 stars. So it's not even a matter of, just needing to get enough crystals to pull it once. The people who are pulling it multiple times are going to be at a pretty decent competitive edge by having their units limit broken higher. And like I said, the game does a pretty good job. For the most part, there are always exceptions of making these characters very good. And they try to keep things fresh by making them, better than the units that were out a few months ago in certain ways. By making certain teams very viable is usually how Dragon Ball Legends has been doing it lately. So for example, they'll release a new unit, and it's gonna, be a powerful opponent unit for that team. and then the next banner usually has another one that's powerful opponent. And so they kind of all go together, really, even. And then there for a little while in the meta, you know, that certain team is the main team that you see everybody using. You know, oftentimes you'll see a lot of God Key or a lot of Future or Fusion Warriors. You know, those are very viable teams in the meta, but other teams have had their spotlight, like Regen and Girls and things like that. But generally speaking, you want to keep up and be on some of the newest teams because they're going to be the biggest ones in the meta, and they're, you know, the developers are kind of building the game around those units that they're releasing right now. So it's very possible to just skip a new banner altogether, but not generally a good idea. You know, there are definitely some banners where the units are more skippable, more passable, not nearly as viable. But a lot of times you won't go very long with several banners like that. You may have one banner here and there where you're like, that's passable. You know, sometimes like an all-star banner is usually not that big of a deal, but you know, they'll drop banners with Legends limited characters, which are especially known for being pretty universally great units. But they are less commonly dropped. They are even more rare than your regular units. And let's get into Zenkais. Even aside from pulling the good units, you know, and pulling duplicates of them, the game has Zenkais, which I used to not really think the game was pay to win at all. And then I started to realize about, you know, Zenkais and how big of a deal those are. Basically, if you pull a character to the point of getting them to 7 stars, certain characters are able to be Zenkai awoken, which then usually they'll drop a banner where you can drop another 1,000 crystals to get some awakening Z power towards them. And that awakening Z power will Zenkai awaken them. And again, there is another like 7 layers of Zenkai awakening. So, you know, thousands and thousands of awakening Z power, which you normally have to get through summoning on the banner. They do have a decent amount of free Zenkais that they'll make where there's an event that you can grind. But even at that, sometimes the grinding the event without necessarily having to summon and use Chrono Crystal per se, it will require so much energy that you very well may have to use real life money to buy energy and, you know, skip tickets and things like that. So there's that. That aspect is not quite as common, but yeah, it's about a 50-50 mix, I would say, of certain Zenkais that have to be bought. And of course, generally, the Zenkais that are really good, they do put on, you know, the summoning banners where you have to drop 1,000 crystals just to further enhance the character, not even to pull the character in the first part. So after you have summoned it, I don't know how many times. Let me see if there's a thing. How many times do you have to summon to get a unit to 7 stars? So according to this Reddit post, you need to get 5 sparking units to get them to 7 stars. So basically you need to pull the unit 5 times. I honestly thought it was more than that, but assuming that math is correct, and you do need to pull a unit 5 times. So, you know, these sparking characters usually have less than a 5% chance of a drop, sometimes even less than that. If it's Legends limited, it's usually 2.5% drop or around that much. So you have to pull that 5 times already just to get it to 7 stars. And then after that, you've got to spend, you know, thousands and thousands of Chrono Crystals to get them Zenkai awakened to at least, you know, Zenkai 7. You can get them to just Zenkai 1 or 3 and get a decent little buff. But again, the more you're willing to drop into that, the stronger that unit is going to be by a lot. And again, not only is that unit stronger, but it's going to buff the rest of the team even more. And the game drops Zenkais pretty much just as often, if not more often, than it drops new units. So again, this is kind of the way that they use to, you know, make a certain team or a certain unit more viable. It was originally, I believe, intended to make weak units updated and make them, you know, stronger, make them relevant again without having to release new units. And sometimes that's how it's used, but a lot of times it really seems like it's more so used to give you an excuse to spend 1,000 crystals. You know, it seems like less of a let's take this mediocre character and make them decent and more modern thing, and more of let's take this mediocre character and make them busted and make them a must-have. And, you know, all this to say, you may be thinking, well, Stormpow, I'm not even interested in playing PvP. You know, I don't really like that scene, so I'm just going to play offline and go from there. So none of this is relevant. Well, that's not necessarily the case, my good friend. Oftentimes when a new banner drops, there are events surrounding that banner, and you'll see the battle bonus characters are those new units. So even if it's not a unit that you know, want to play PvP on, you don't care anything about the current meta, you just want to play for fun, a lot of times these events that have really good rewards are locked behind having that unit as the bonus battle unit. And what that means is basically it gives them a very significant boost. And it's not impossible to beat these events without the battle bonus characters. You can technically beat them with whatever team you want, but a lot of them they make incredibly difficult, and pretty much to, by design, so that way it is very, very, very difficult, nigh impossible to beat it without using the bonus battle characters. So with all of this being said, it kind of pains me to say this, but in my opinion, for the most part, Dragon Ball Legends is pay to win. Now, I will say that when you are a new player, you are going to disagree with that, because I disagreed with that when I was new. I had so many opportunities to get crystals that I was able to get pretty much whatever new unit I wanted without dropping a dime into the game. But as you get further and further into the game, you've beaten all the story modes and other things like that, there are way less opportunities to get free crystals. And, you'll find yourself under a little bit of a time crunch unless you're willing to drop hours and hours and hours into the game every single day. Then as a furtherly advanced player, you've beaten, like I said, all the main stories, you're probably going to find yourself at least pretty tempted to buy some Chrono Crystals. Even if it's on a sale or something like that, you're going to be a lot more tempted to drop real life money in it if you want to keep up. But again, there are exceptions to everything. There's going to be people who it doesn't bother them playing the game for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours to get Chrono Crystals just to have a chance at pulling these units, much less needing to pull them multiple times. But personally, in my experience, most of the people that I talk to that are, at my point in the game or further, and they don't have as much access to free Chrono Crystals, it is definitely very, very, very difficult to keep up without dropping any amount of money, which is my basis for considering the game as pay to win. Make sure, if you haven't already, be sure to hit the like button on this video. I'd love to see this video get to like 50 likes or so. And also be sure to subscribe if you do like my content. Be sure to check out all the links for my socials, my website, my podcast down in the description below. Shout out to our channel members. Thank you guys so much for supporting the channel. I love you guys so much. And if you want more info on becoming a channel member and supporting me for as little as 99 cents even, I mean, come on, y'all, you can go down and click the join button and do that. Hey, it's cheaper than buying Chrono Crystals. So, I mean, I'm just saying. But anyway, guys, for now, I'd like to thank you all for watching. I hope you have a nice day, and goodbye.